Karen slaps teenage server for asking to split the bill. Didn't know her friends already agreed to it. The trendy rooftop brunch spot buzzed with weekend energy as the city below shimmered in the late morning sun. Laughter rose above the sound of clinking mimosas and the rhythmic beat of lo-fi jazz streaming from overhead speakers. Servers weaved gracefully between tables draped in crisp white linens, their arms expertly balancing trays of artisanal waffles, avocado toasts, and glittering fruit cocktails. At the far end, near the sleek glass railing overlooking the skyline, a group of 4 women was settling into their reserved table. 3 were already seated, dressed in pastel sundresses and large sunglasses, exchanging polite laughter and inside jokes from yoga class. The 4th chair remained empty, its arrival as anticipated as it was dreaded. The women's conversation dipped into awkward silence just as the elevator doors dinged and out stepped Karen, wearing oversized designer shades, a leopard print maxi dress, and a sun hat that could double as a satellite dish. She marched across the deck with the exaggerated gait of someone convinced all eyes were on her, huffing as she reached the table and dramatically flung her purse onto the spare seat. "Can you believe how hot it is up here?" Karen barked before even saying hello. "They're charging these prices and can't even afford shade. Ridiculous. Hi, ladies." The others forced smiles. "Hi, Karen," they chimed in varying degrees of awkward warmth. Amy, the most easygoing of the trio, tried to lighten the mood by offering Karen a glass of the shared mimosa pitcher. "We just started pouring. It's delicious peach and orange blend." Karen waved it off with disdain. "Please, like I'm putting that sugar bomb in my body. I'm watching carbs, I'll just have a green juice if they even have one." As if summoned, a young server approached the table with a notepad and an enthusiastic smile. Mia, no more than 18, wore her blonde hair in a tight bun and had a neatly pressed apron cinched around her waist. She greeted the table warmly, announcing the specials of the day and offering water with lemon slices. The 3 women nodded appreciatively, placing their orders with ease: scrambled egg bowls, salmon benedict, and sourdough toast. When Mia turned to Karen, the older woman didn't look up from her phone, forcing a tense silence that hung for too long. "Hi ma'am, can I get you anything to start with?" Mia asked gently, still smiling. Karen's fingers froze mid-scroll. She looked up, eyes hidden behind dark lenses. "Excuse me, do I look like a ma'am to you? I am not 80, try again." Mia blinked, taken aback. "I'm so sorry, would you prefer?" "Just bring me a hot tea, 2 lemon wedges, not slices, and some agave. And if it's not hot enough, I'm sending it back." "Yes, of course," Mia nodded, writing quickly and stepping away. Once she was out of earshot, Karen launched into a tirade about how young people these days had no manners, no respect for their elders, and certainly no concept of service. The other women gave each other looks again, subtle, weary, the kind that said, "Here we go again." This wasn't the first time Karen had been unnecessarily cruel to service workers, and despite their misgivings, they always brushed it off to avoid confrontation. Today, though, the tension in the air hinted that the thread of patience was thinning. As they sipped mimosas and nibbled at shared fruit platters, the conversation slowly turned toward old stories from when they first met in yoga class, how Lauren fell asleep during a meditation session and snored so loud it woke up half the studio, or the time Amy accidentally wore 2 different shoes. Karen, uninterested, steered the conversation toward the decline of Western society and how brunch was a perfect symbol of millennial laziness. "Back in my day, people cooked eggs at home. And if you went out, it was for something elegant, not this egg on toast nonsense with foam and flowers." Mia returned with a tray, carefully placing drinks and food on the table. She was attentive, double-checking orders and replenishing waters. Karen examined her tea like it was a forensic sample, holding the cup up to the light, swirling it like it was wine. She sniffed it, frowned. Then with a long sigh she summoned Mia back. "This is barely warm. Can you go boil it properly this time?" Mia hesitated but nodded. "Of course, I'll have a fresh one out in just a moment." As Mia walked away, Lauren leaned in. We should definitely tip her well. Poor girl's been nothing but polite. I agree, said Michelle. And just so there's no drama later, let's split the bill 4 ways, okay? All 3 women nodded. Amy flagged Mia discreetly as she passed by with another table's drink tray and said, "Hey, just so you know, we'll split the bill evenly when we're done. Makes it easier." Mia nodded with a grateful smile. Noted. I'll make sure of that when I bring the check. Karen returned to her commentary about why brunch menus were a scam, but her voice faded into the background as the other 3 quietly enjoyed the breeze, the city view, and the subtle camaraderie of being in this together, though now more united by endurance than excitement. When the food arrived, Karen sent back her eggs for being too yellow and berated the runner for not knowing how to poach properly. The meal became an exhausting marathon of complaints. The hollandaise was too tangy, the plate too small, and the music trying too hard to be hip. At some point, Karen pulled out a pill bottle and shook it loudly before swallowing something with her tea, muttering something about needing to survive this circus. As the plates cleared and the group prepared to wrap up, Mia returned with her notepad, still composed despite the repeated disrespect. "Just confirming," she said gently, "you'd like the bill split 4 ways." Karen slammed her hand on the table hard enough to rattle the cutlery. "What did you just say?" Mia blinked, confused. "The check. You'd like it split evenly, right, as the others requested." Karen stood up. "How dare you? Do I look like I need my bill split? That is so rude. What, do you think I can't afford brunch?" Her voice cut through the restaurant like a blade, drawing the attention of neighboring tables. "That is the most disrespectful thing I've ever heard." Before Mia could respond, Karen raised her hand, and in one swift, shocking motion slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the rooftop like a whip crack. A hush fell across the deck. Mia stood frozen, one hand covering her cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief. The music stopped, conversations halted, glasses hovered midair, every eye turned to their table. The air felt thick like the moment before a storm. Karen stood panting slightly, waiting for some kind of validation, an ally, a nod, a murmur of agreement. But all she found was silence. The silence that descended over the rooftop patio was not just the absence of sound. It was a moment suspended in disbelief, stretched taut by the weight of collective shock. Mia's hand trembled against her cheek, her fingers splayed across the vivid red imprint beginning to blossom on her skin. Her eyes shimmered, not from tears but from stunned disbelief, the kind that claws at the throat before any emotion can even find a name. Karen remained frozen in her stance, chest rising and falling quickly, nostrils flared, as if she were waiting for applause or at least some show of agreement from her companions. But none came. The women she had come to brunch with were no longer looking at her as a friend. Their gazes, once tinged with tolerance and mild exasperation, had shifted into something colder, sharper, disgust perhaps, or shame. Amy was the first to move, slowly rising from her chair, her expression unreadable. She looked to Mia, then to Karen, then back to Mia again before speaking. "Are you okay?" Amy asked gently, stepping toward the server with care, as if any sudden movement might make things worse. Mia blinked and nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. I think so." Karen scoffed loudly. "Oh, come on, don't make it a federal case." She was being mouthy and disrespectful. She was asking for it. Michelle stood now too, shaking her head. "Karen, what the hell is wrong with you?" Lauren followed, pushing her chair back and stepping between Karen and Mia. "You just hit a teenage girl because she was doing her job." "She tried to humiliate me," Karen snapped. "Acting like I can't pay my own brunch. What kind of server says that to a guest?" "She didn't," Amy interjected firmly, her tone carrying the weight of years of restraint finally snapping. "We told her to split the bill. We literally asked her. You're the only one who didn't know because you were too busy insulting everyone and everything." Karen's lips parted, stunned that her authority had been so directly challenged. Her eyes flicked between the women, seeking some sign of retreat, a softening glance. anything that might reassure her that this wasn't unraveling the way it clearly was. But the lines had been drawn, and she was on the wrong side of all of them. From behind the bar, the restaurant manager, an older man with salt and pepper hair and a calm yet commanding presence, arrived with a hurried pace and eyes already scanning for answers. He took one look at Mia's face and the surrounding guests, many still watching in silence or whispering behind menus, and his jaw tightened. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice even but urgent. "She hit me," Mia said, her voice steadier now, "because I asked if they wanted the bill split." "I did not hit her," Karen snapped, pointing an accusing finger. "I tapped her. Don't be dramatic. She was being disrespectful." "You slapped her," Michelle corrected, her voice like steel, "right in front of all of us." The manager turned to Karen with a neutral expression, hands clasped behind his back. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave the premises. This is a zero-tolerance establishment for violence against staff." Karen gasped like someone had smacked her. "Excuse me, you're kicking me out. I'm the victim here. This entire place is toxic. Your staff needs retraining, your music is obnoxious, and your eggs are runny." "I won't debate our menu with you, ma'am," the manager replied calmly. "But I won't allow any customer to lay hands on an employee. Security has already been notified." As if on cue, two uniformed security personnel emerged from the side elevator, their posture relaxed but purposeful. Karen's eyes widened, shifting from one man to the other as realization dawned. She stumbled back a step, grabbing her purse from the table and fumbling with its straps. "You can't do this. I'm leaving a review so vicious it'll haunt your Yelp page for years," she barked as one of the guards gestured toward the exit. "You're welcome to leave a review," the manager said, unbothered, "but you'll never dine here again." As Karen was ushered away, the rooftop was still eerily quiet, the tension hanging like fog. A few patrons clapped softly, others murmured things like "good for them," or "about time someone stood up to one of them." Karen's angry footsteps faded into the distance, and the moment she was gone, it felt as if the entire space exhaled at once. Mia remained standing, slightly rigid, her arms crossed tightly across her chest as if she were trying to physically hold herself together. Amy stepped closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You really didn't deserve that. I'm so sorry." Lauren nodded. "That was horrifying. Are you sure you're okay?" "I think I just need a second," Mia said, voice trembling as the adrenaline wore off. "I've worked here for a year. I've dealt with rudeness, sure, but never that." The manager returned, offering Mia a seat at an empty table nearby. "Take 10 minutes, breathe, we'll handle everything." The three women huddled near her, uncertain if they should leave or stay, but ultimately deciding to sit down and wait. A busser came over and quietly replaced their silverware and filled their water glasses again. The music resumed, but it felt subdued now. The tone of the brunch shifted into something less festive and more contemplative. Michelle leaned forward and sighed. "I feel like I need to apologize to the universe for ever bringing Karen into our group. We knew she was like this. Just never thought she'd go that far." "She's been getting worse," Lauren murmured. "Every get-together it's something. Always someone else's fault, always a new enemy." "I kept telling myself she was just stressed or misunderstood," Amy added. "But that was abuse. No excuses." They looked at one another in quiet solidarity, the unspoken truth floating in the air. This was the last time Karen would be in their circle. There were no more second chances to give. Across the patio, Mia sat at the table with a glass of water, her back straight, her eyes staring out over the skyline. She looked like someone trying to hold herself together while the pieces were still falling. The manager stood a few feet away, arms crossed, speaking to someone on the phone, probably reporting the incident or filing it officially. Staff members moved gently around her, respectful and careful, like she was something fragile that had to be treated with reverence after what had just happened. The brunch continued, but it would not be remembered for the views or the food or even the laughter that had begun it. It would be remembered as the day someone crossed a line and no one looked away. The incident lingered in the air long after Cairn had been escorted out of the restaurant, casting a shadow over the once carefree brunch atmosphere. Conversations resumed slowly, cautiously, as if everyone on the rooftop was still processing what they had just witnessed. Mia remained at the corner table where the manager had gently guided her moments earlier, still staring into the horizon as though she could blink away what had happened. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers knotted together, knuckles white with tension. A soft breeze lifted strands of her hair from her cheek, and though the sting from the slap had dulled slightly, the emotional weight clung tightly. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply breathed over and over, counting her inhales and exhales, grounding herself with each one as the reality of the situation rooted itself deeper in her chest. It wasn't just that she'd been struck. It was the sheer disbelief that it had happened so publicly, so brazenly, over something so trivial. She had worked through spilled drinks, late orders, entitled customers, and microaggressions before, but never violence. Not like this. At their original table, Amy, Lauren, and Michelle sat with their untouched plates and hollowed expressions, glancing toward Mia every few minutes as guilt began to settle in. They hadn't raised their voices when Cairn's behavior began. They hadn't warned the staff beforehand. They had tolerated and enabled her outbursts for years in the name of preserving social harmony, telling themselves she was just brash or having a bad day. But now that silence felt like complicity. Now they saw what their passivity had allowed to grow unchecked. Amy, always the peacemaker, broke the silence first with a quiet murmur. "I think we need to make this right, not just with Mia but with ourselves." Lauren nodded slowly, stirring the melting ice in her glass. "We let this happen. We watched her disrespect people over and over and we laughed it off. We made excuses." "I think it's more than that," Michelle added, her voice brittle with self-reproach. "We were embarrassed by her, but we were scared of calling her out, like maybe she'd turn on us too, and now someone else paid the price." The manager returned to their table, now visibly more composed, though a hard edge remained behind his eyes. "Thank you for staying calm," he said evenly. "Mia's taking a short break. She'll be fine physically, but we're giving her the day off regardless. This sort of thing shouldn't happen, and I want you to know we take it seriously." "I'm so sorry for everything," Amy said immediately, standing up. "We're horrified. That woman Cairn, she was one of our friends, but after this, we're done. We completely support Mia. If there's anything we can do to make it right." The manager gave a nod of appreciation. "Honestly, just showing her kindness when she gets back would mean a lot. She's young, but she's one of the most hardworking people here. She didn't deserve that. No one does." Michelle reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet, then placed a few folded bills discreetly on the table. "We're covering brunch for all of us, and please add whatever she would have made in tips today to it." Lauren added her share without hesitation, and Amy followed. It wasn't an attempt to buy forgiveness. It was a gesture of accountability. The women sat in silence again after the manager left, watching as Mia, finally composed enough to return, walked back onto the main floor with a quiet determination. Her hair was pulled back tighter now, face washed and clean of any trace of tears, but her expression was different. Less carefree, more guarded. It was the look of someone who had learned something too soon, how fragile safety could be, and how quickly cruelty could slip through the cracks. As she passed their table, Amy gently rose and placed a hand on Mia's arm. "Mia, we're so sorry for everything. You didn't deserve that, and we should have said something sooner. Please know we're on your side." Mia paused, looking down at the three women with a mix of hesitation and grace. "Thanks. I appreciate it. I just want to finish my shift and go home if that's okay." "Of course," Michelle said quickly. "But just so you know, people saw what happened. The other customers, the manager, even your coworkers, they all know the truth. You handled it with grace. I couldn't have done that." A flicker of emotion passed over Mia's features, something between appreciation and exhaustion. She nodded and continued on, returning to her station. The rooftop resumed its rhythm slowly, the chatter rising back into the air like a cautiously rebuilding song. But the women at that table had changed, and the ripples of what had happened would reach further than they realized. At the far end of the deck, a couple who had been filming during the incident uploaded the video to social media with the caption, "This poor waitress got slapped just for asking a question. Unreal. Karen at brunch." Within minutes, the video began to gain traction, with comments pouring in from people shocked, outraged, and supportive of Mia. Back inside the restaurant, the staff was already circulating the clip, murmurs of sympathy and anger swelling as the video spread. Mia, unaware of the storm brewing online, simply finished her tasks, wiped down a few menus, and helped another server restock the drink station. She wasn't trying to be strong for the sake of appearance. She just didn't know what else to do. In truth, she felt like curling into a ball and sleeping for a week. But something deeper urged her to stand tall, to finish what she started, to walk through the discomfort rather than run from it. She didn't want to give Karen the satisfaction of breaking her. As brunch wound down, the women finally stood, paid their bill, and approached Mia one last time before leaving. Amy offered her a card with her name and number written neatly in black ink. "This is for you if you ever need anything. We don't want this to be the end of the story. If there's something we can do, connect you with legal help, start a fundraiser, anything, we're in." Mia hesitated, then took the card slowly. "Thanks, I don't know yet, but thanks." The trio walked away, down the stairs and back into the city, no longer talking about yoga poses or brunch specials. Instead, they talked about accountability, about the discomfort of complicity, and about what it means to finally draw a line when someone crosses it. Behind them, Mia finished her shift in quiet resilience, unaware that her name was already trending online, and that the world was about to rally behind her in ways she never imagined. By late afternoon, the rooftop brunch crowd had thinned, the midday sun giving way to a gentler light that cast golden hues across the city skyline. Mia stood behind the server station, folding cloth napkins with methodical precision, trying to lose herself in the rhythm of the task. Her body moved out of habit, but her mind buzzed with the strange aftermath of what had occurred just hours earlier. The sting on her cheek had long since faded, replaced by a faint soreness, but the emotional weight of the slap still sat heavy on her chest. Each time someone looked her way, whether a coworker, a customer, or the manager, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were seeing her differently now. Not just as Mia the weekend waitress, but as Mia the girl who'd been assaulted in front of a full patio. That wasn't how she wanted to be remembered, and yet that moment now defined her in ways beyond her control. She didn't know that, only a few blocks away, a local news outlet had picked up the video of the incident, embedding it on their homepage beneath a headline that read, "Brunch turns violent. Rooftop server slapped by entitled customer." She didn't know that TikTok influencers had already begun sharing it with their reactions, adding music and captions, their shocked faces drawing in thousands of views by the minute. She didn't know about the Reddit thread with hundreds of comments analyzing every frame of the footage, dissecting Karen's tone, her posture, even the color of her purse. All she knew was that she felt like she was being watched through a magnifying glass, even if only by the people inside the restaurant, and that feeling left her floating between humiliation and surreal detachment. The manager approached quietly and rested a hand on the edge of the counter, his voice low and careful. "Mia, you've done enough for today. Why don't you clock out early and take the rest of the day to breathe?" She looked up at him, brows pinched slightly. "Are you sure? I still haven't finished the..." "You've done more than enough. The staff has your back. We've been getting non-stop calls of support since that video went online." He hesitated, then added, "You're kind of everywhere right now." Mia blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "The video, the one someone took of what happened. It's going viral, Mia. I mean really viral." Her eyes widened and she put the napkin down, her fingers suddenly limp. "Oh no, I didn't even know someone filmed it. I know it's a lot, but I think you should go home, talk to your family, maybe lay low for a bit. There's going to be a tension for a while, but you're not alone in it." Mia's thoughts raced. A flush of anxiety surged through her. Viral meant exposure. Viral meant trolls and strangers and opinions she never asked for. She imagined her classmates seeing it, her relatives texting, people at her school whispering behind her back. But then she remembered the feeling right after the slap, the look on everyone's face, the manager's support, the customers who clapped when Karen was escorted out. Maybe not all attention was bad. Maybe this time, it wasn't about being mocked or ridiculed, but seen for enduring something unfair with quiet strength. She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll head out. Thank you for backing me up." The manager smiled and gave her a reassuring nod. "Anytime, Mia, you did good." As she clocked out and gathered her things, her phone began vibrating nonstop. Notifications from Instagram, TikTok, and unknown numbers lit up her screen. When she finally checked, she saw dozens of new followers, hundreds of comments and messages from people she'd never met telling her she was brave, that they stood with her, that no one should ever be treated the way she was. Some messages came from former servers, baristas, retail clerks, all strangers who had endured their own battles with difficult customers, thanking her for showing the world what so many workers face behind polite smiles and scripted greetings. It was overwhelming, but strangely comforting too. At home, Mia sat on her bed, still in her server uniform, surrounded by the hum of online attention. Her parents had already seen the video and wrapped her in protective hugs the moment she walked through the door. Her mom kept checking on her every few minutes, offering tea, cookies, and emotional support, while her dad alternated between fuming and praising her calm reaction. They weren't entirely sure how to help, but their presence grounded her more than they knew. Meanwhile, across the city, Karen sat in her home with all the blinds drawn, furiously typing on her phone. Her social media pages were flooded with angry comments, reposts of the slap from different angles, and hashtags mocking her name. She tried to report the videos, even flagged some for harassment, but it only made things worse. She couldn't believe how quickly the world had turned against her. Her face was a meme. Her name was trending. Her old friends had blocked her. Even her sister sent a text that simply said, "You need help." Karen told herself it was all unfair, exaggerated, taken out of context. She blamed the server. She blamed the other women. She blamed the media. But deep down, beneath the outrage and denial, a creeping realization was forming. She had finally gone too far. Back in Mia's bedroom, her phone buzzed with a new notification. An email from a local women's rights organization offering support and legal advice. A few messages down was one from a daytime talk show producer asking if she'd be willing to speak about the incident. She wasn't sure about that one, not yet, but the idea that she had a voice people wanted to hear was something she was still wrapping her head around. A week ago, she was just a teenage server trying to earn enough money for college applications and maybe a summer trip. Now, people were calling her brave, strong, even inspiring. It felt surreal. And yet, there was something powerful in the fact that all of this had come from standing her ground, without yelling, without retaliation, just by existing in the truth of what happened. The three women from brunch, Amy, Lauren, and Michelle, had also been pulled into the whirlwind. They were receiving messages thanking them for speaking up and offering their support to Mia. They had already begun organizing a donation drive for local restaurant staff and service workers, inspired by what happened, using their platforms and connections to make something good out of a terrible moment. They weren't doing it for clout. They were doing it because they'd been awakened, because silence was no longer an option. Mia, now changed in ways she hadn't expected, stared at her screen one last time before setting her phone aside. She pulled the blankets around her shoulders, not out of fear but for comfort, the kind that came after a long, exhausting day that somehow ended with a sense of victory. The story wasn't over yet, but for the first time since the slap, Mia allowed herself to smile, not because everything was perfect, but because, for once, she knew she wasn't alone. By the end of the week, the storm that had swelled around Mia's name had evolved into something she never could have predicted. What started as a single shocking moment caught on video had ignited conversations across the country about the treatment of service workers, the power dynamics in customer-facing roles, and the courage it takes to stay calm in the face of humiliation. Mia had watched from the sidelines at first, uncertain and overwhelmed as her face appeared in articles. Her name trended on social media, and people she had never met spoke about her with admiration. At school, she was met with wide eyes and hesitant greetings. Some students offered shy thumbs up as she passed in the hallway, while others whispered about the slap they'd seen replayed on every platform imaginable. Teachers tiptoed around her at first, unsure whether to say something or stay silent, but one English teacher took her aside and told her plainly that she was proud, that her poise had sparked something meaningful. That quiet vote of confidence stuck with Mia more than any viral post. At home, the attention settled into a strange kind of normal. Her parents fielded phone calls from reporters and activists while gently reminding her that she didn't have to say yes to any of it. Her younger brother, once embarrassed to be seen with her in public, now walked taller beside her, daring anyone to mess with his sister. There were ugly messages too, of course. Anonymous accounts accusing her of playing victim, of seeking fame, of being too sensitive. But they were dwarfed by the flood of support, donations, artwork, poems, and even a short animation someone created retelling the incident as a modern fairy tale. Strangers sent messages of solidarity. A local coffee shop posted a sign that read, "We stand with Mia," and offered discounts to anyone working in the service industry. She didn't feel like a hero. She still remembered how badly her hands had shaken after the slap, how long it had taken for her breath to steady, how vulnerable she'd felt under the weight of everyone's eyes. But with every message of encouragement and each story shared by other servers, baristas, and retail clerks, she realized that what happened to her was part of something much bigger, something people had waited a long time to talk about. Meanwhile, Karen had all but vanished from public life. Her social media accounts were either deleted or set to private, and a statement hastily issued through a lawyer did little to redeem her image. She claimed the video lacked context, that she had been provoked, that she was undergoing stress at the time. But no one bought it. The footage was clear, unambiguous, and damning. Her name became synonymous with entitlement, the slap used in countless memes, reenactments, and even parody songs. Former friends cut ties. A local boutique she frequented posted a video returning her recent purchases with a caption that read, "We don't serve bullies." The backlash wasn't just digital, it was personal. Her attempts to defend herself only made things worse. For the first time, she was forced to sit in the consequences of her own actions with no one to deflect the blame onto. But Mia didn't focus on Karen anymore. She had other things to do. With the help of Amy, Lauren, and Michelle, the three women who had once been Karen's brunch companions and were now her most vocal supporters, a public fundraiser had been launched, not just for Mia, but for a broader campaign to support service workers who faced harassment and abuse. The campaign, cheekily titled "Split the Bill, Not the Respect," gained rapid traction. Within a few days, it raised enough to fund legal aid resources for young workers, workshops on workplace rights, and a college fund for Mia herself. The three women hosted local events, shared their own story on podcasts, and committed themselves to making their silence in the past a tool for action in the present. They never pretended to be perfect. In fact, they were open about their regret, their past complacency, and their resolve to be better allies from now on. That honesty resonated, perhaps more than any polished PR message ever could. 1 week after the incident, the rooftop restaurant invited Mia back, not to serve, but to be celebrated. The manager, along with the entire staff, hosted a private gathering in her honor. It wasn't a spectacle. There were no press cameras, no influencers live streaming. It was just people who knew her and worked beside her, gathered to acknowledge what she had endured and what she had sparked. The sun dipped low as the golden hour spread across the deck. casting warm light over the familiar tables and glowing glass panels. Mia stood at the very spot where she had been slapped, but this time she wasn't holding a notepad. She wore a soft blue sundress, her hair down, her face calm, steady and radiant with something unspoken, dignity perhaps, or quiet power. The manager gave a short speech, thanking her for her grace under fire and for being a catalyst for change. Mia was then handed a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a plaque that read, "To Mia for standing tall when it mattered most." Her fingers traced the engraving, and for the first time all week her eyes filled with tears, not from pain or fear but from gratitude. The staff clapped, the guests clapped, and the moment was hers. Later, as the sun set and the sky turned to lavender, Amy approached with a shy smile and handed Mia an envelope. "We weren't sure if you'd want to do anything with it," she said, "but we collected some of the letters and messages people have been sending. We printed them out, in case you ever need a reminder of what you did." Mia took the envelope with both hands, feeling its weight. Inside were hundreds of voices, each echoing the same sentiment: thank you. Not for being perfect, not for being fearless, but for standing up, for holding her ground, for showing that even in a world where cruelty can happen in broad daylight, there is still room for courage, compassion, and consequences. As she walked to the edge of the rooftop and looked out at the city, Mia let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The wind tugged gently at her hair, the lights flickered on across the skyline, and for the first time since that fateful brunch, she felt entirely at peace. The story had found its ending, not with rage or vengeance, but with justice, healing, and the quiet victory of being seen for who she truly was, a young woman who refused to be silenced.